My name is Gary Russell, and this is the Sirens of Audio.
G'day audiophiles, you are listening to the Sirens of Audio, the podcast that explores the universe of Doctor Who, and in this case, Blake Seven as well. My name is Dwayne.
And my name is Philip. G'day audiophiles and g'day Dwayne.
Well, we have got a very exciting instalment today. We are going to be speaking with none other than the original Travis, Stephen Greif. He's going to be coming up very shortly. Very excited about that, Philip.
Yes, I am indeed. You know that I adore Blake Seven, one of my favourite shows. Yes, I've been looking forward to meeting someone from the show for a long time.
And there you go. You got Travis himself, so that's good. We're going to be talking with him later about not just Blake Seven, going to go in depth with a lot of his career and his upbringing. So that's going to be very fascinating. But first, Philip, I was trying to avoid it, but I can't. It's a rabbit hole. Here we go. All right, so nothing controversial in this rabbit hole this time. We're going to be talking about our first memories of Blake's Seven, because I think our memories, yours and mine, might differ. What are your first memories of Blake Seven?
I first saw season 3.
Right.
It used to be on very late on ABC, so it was the repeat of season 3. There was an Australian television show called Rush, which starred John Waters, which was sort of an Australian outback sort of gunslinging sort of program, sort of instead of the Snowy Mountains, I think. And then following Rush was a show called Blake Seven. And I used to have a little portable TV in my bedroom. So I'm trying to think how old I would have been. I must have been about 12 or 13, I think. And I used to watch Rush, and then I guess it must have been story 2 or story 3 of season 3. And I just kept playing, and I saw this show, and it was spellbinding. It was fantastic. And so I kept watching it and got to the end of season 3, and then they repeated back to season 1, 2, and 3, and then the 4th season came out. And I started getting the Blake Seven monthly magazine started, and I was excited for years of Blake Seven to come, and then the 4th season ended, and I was devastated. But yeah, that's sort of my earliest remembrances of Blake Seven. What about you?
Well, as a Doctor Who fan, I would hear a lot about this show, Blake Seven. It was the similar production team to Doctor Who, similar style. Lots of people were always talking about it, and I never had any idea what it was about. I didn't see it when it was on television, that's for sure. But it would have been in the late 80s, early 90s. Everything was happening in the late 80s, early 90s for me. When we had, my family did not have a VHS. We had a beta video recorder. So remember you used to go to the video shop and you'd have the two sections, VHS and beta?
Yes.
So I was always in the beta section. So what happened was one day I went in and I saw the video release of Blake Seven, the beginning. Now, I don't know if you remember how the BBC released Blake Seven, but
I still have it.
Do?
I still have the beginning. I have the first. Yep, I have all the VHSs.
So the beginning was like an amalgamation of the first 4 episodes in a big omnibus. So that was my first experience of Blake Seven, was watching that right through. And even though the thing ran for 3 hours non-stop, I was just riveted the whole way through, and I was hooked from then on. I will say that I was quite shocked when I did get to see the actual unedited shows, because they virtually cut most of the first episode out. I guess it was because, the connotations involved there were that Blake was a pedophile. So maybe that had something to do with why they cut most of that episode. It's a pretty hard-hitting episode, that very first one.
My memories was the 4th episode that was cut to pieces.
Is that the one that introduced Callie?
Yes. They had all the Callie scenes, and they basically cut all the scenes of the Liberator. To be honest, was probably a good thing.
I do recall that was pretty cut too. But you had booming Brian Blessed there, and all those characters coming together for the first time was just incredible, and I was hooked from then on. I think the next one I got was called Jewel. So you would have that. Jewel was a combination of Seek, Locate, Destroy, Jewel, and
Project Avalon.
Was it Project Avalon as well?
It was.
Because they all featured Travis. So, because I think Mission to Destiny was in the middle there, but didn't feature Travis.
Yes, but that wasn't on part of the video.
That's right. It was cut completely. So they just omnibused those 3 episodes, which was really good. And then Aurak, that was available too. So that was like a combination of the final 2 episodes of Series 1 and the first episode of Series 2.
That's right. Redemption, Aurak, and... Oh, no, is it Redemption?
Yeah, it was Deliverance, Aurak, Redemption. Yep, and then the Aftermath. So that was the first 3 episodes of Season 3, all cut into the first. So that was my experience of Blake 7, and I've been probably not as huge a fan as you, but I still very much enjoy the series and have done ever since. So let's jump out of that rabbit hole now, because we've got a lot to get through with Stephen Greif. He has spoken to us at length, and we're very, very excited to share that with you right now. But to get us into that, Big Finish have recently released a new series of box sets based on the worlds of Blake 7, but some of the characters from Blake 7 have come in to these box sets. Avalon was the first couple of box sets that were released. So here's a clip from Avalon featuring Stephen Greif as Travis.
Do you know why I joined Space Command?
Sorry, I thought that was rhetorical. No, why?
To get away from people. Having to be perpetually nice to annoying people I don't consider worthy of the effort or my time.
People like Dag here. And the President.
People whose talent versus nuisance ratio I am required to weigh up. Like you.
Easier to go into space and shoot them, yes?
Is that what you think I am? An unthinking soldier? You're wrong. I got to be a space commander because I cared for the men under me. I don't treat them as expendable.
I'm sure they appreciate that.
I'm not averse to making sacrifices for the greater good, but the situation needs to be extreme for that to happen. I don't dislike the men and women under my command. I don't like the people we are expected to protect.
People like me. And Dag.
Not at all. She has a proven skill and therefore is always useful to Central Security.
And me?
On any other day, surplus to requirements.
Were you surplus to requirements, Travis? Is that why they took your commission away?
Dag, let's take a break. Leave the prisoner hooked up.
Leaving the machine unmonitored risks burning out his brain, sir.
Yes, I know.
Sir.
Cell M6 door opening.
Stephen Greif is a multi-award-nominated National Theatre and Royal Shakespearean actor with a career spanning all genres and styles, including television, stage, film, radio, and the corporate world. But to us, he's best known as Space Commander Travis in Season 1 of Blake 7 on TV, and in audiobooks and full-cast audio dramas produced by Big Finish to this day. Welcome, Stephen, and thanks for joining us.
Hi.
Could you tell us a little bit about your upbringing and your background?
Yeah, sure. Well, I was born and brought up for the first 10 years in North London, in Highgate to be precise, Sheldon Avenue, and in comfort. My dad was a Viennese businessman who'd met my mum, who lived in Stamford Hill, at a dance in Brussels, and they conversed in French. And 3 days later, back in London, they were engaged to be married, and in due course produced 3 children. My late darling kid brother Pete and myself went to a preparatory boarding school in New Milton in Hampshire called Hordle House, and my late elder brother to Eastacre, which was a pre-preliminary school, then to Hordle, then on to Camford Public School. But in 1954, Dad's company partnership was defrauded by a foreign dictatorship government. It's quite true. Everything went. And as a result, Pete and I were taken out of that school, and we all relocated to a small, unfurnished flat near Shepherd's Bush.
Stephen, let me pick up on that if I could. Is that something you can tell us more about? Which government? How was he defrauded?
My father spoke 5 languages, including Spanish, and so was able to travel and do business all over the world, particularly in South America. In Argentina, he came across a company with government connections that sold crocodile skins, which in the early 50s and beyond were in great demand for all kinds of expensive items, handbags, suitcases, wallets, shoes, that kind of thing, and sold in prestige outlets, particularly in the UK. He rang his partners back home, and they all agreed to place a large order of the material to be shipped back to the UK. No sooner had it arrived and various high-class retailers contacted, the shipment sold out, and orders for many, many times that amount were placed. My dad and his partners put up all their available resources, borrowed more, and ordered dozens of crates, paying for them in advance via, letter of credit or some such that you did then. And when they arrived at the UK docks, they were checked, and at the top of each crate were found a few crocodile skins, underneath which were rocks and stones to give the semblance of weight. As you can imagine, it was a catastrophe for all of them. It was clear that a colluded fraud had taken place and that the Perón regime were involved, and that legal action needed to be taken to recover the money. Best lawyers of the day advised my dad and his partners that whilst they had every proof of wrongdoing and would almost certainly win their case, it might take years and years for it to come to court, to say nothing of the crippling cost in legal fees, and then the problem of actually obtaining the judgment. They were advised to drop it, and with horrible consequences. Everything went, the lot. My dad had a very valuable collection of coins and stamps and beautifully bound first editions, all of which had to be sold, including, of course, our family home. For my dad, this downsize in his life led to social ramifications and all that brings. It's probably why I've always tried to exercise caution in monetary matters. What happened then? Well, my brother Peter and I were then enrolled at St James's Norland Primary School near Ladbroke Grove, a diametrically opposite education to the private school system, and this shift in lifestyle and education proved challenging. Certainly led to a short period of depression and loss of confidence for me. My mum was a marvel, coping with all five of us, one loo in a tiny bathroom, and my dad, heavens bless him, travelled all over Europe looking for new business, and by dogged hard work was able to partly climb back up the slippery pole, but that kind of loss, to your self-esteem after wine and roses, it's tough. You remember the song, line from the song, when you're rich they think you really know, and when you're poor, forget it. At least it was like that then. So I then went on to Sloane Grammar School in Chelsea with a little encouragement from my primary school headmaster, where the new syllabus, apart from Latin, which I loved, and some disquiet at home, caused me to put most of my energies into sport, which I was jolly good at. I fulfilled my boyhood ambition to run at the famous White City Stadium, where I'd seen Chris Chataway famously overtake and beat Vladimir Kutz just before the finishing line in the 5,000 metres, and where I'd often watched those UK sprint legends, the Jones boys, David, Ron and Berwin, and my track hero Peter Radford, whose lazy, lolling amble on the track before and after the race I'd copy at our sports ground in the Doverhouse Road in Roehampton. Oh, by the way, Peter Radford won the bronze medal at the Rome Olympic Games after leaving the starting blocks in last place. What a sprinter. If you ever see film of him on YouTube, you'll see he races through the field from 20 metres and ends up in third. He might have won it, actually, if he'd had a good start. Wonderful man. What next? Oh, yes, I left school. I worked as an office boy in an oldie-worldy firm of chartered surveyors in Fleet Street, having had to privately study for my maths O-level, my worst possible subject at school, but I was able to swap geometry, or Chinesery, as it was to me, for statistics, which I adore. That's everything to do with figures. And so, happily, I passed with a distinction.
Well, with all that background, what was it that inspired you to become an actor?
My mum provided the seed. She would come in and sit down with my younger brother Peter and I just before lights out when we were very young, and ask us from which country we'd like to hear our bedtime story. And then she'd rattle off a list of them, and the first of us to yell out a country, that would be it. I mean, I've no idea how she was able to make it all up on the spot, but I do remember that while the stories were intriguing, her accents were not. I simply have no idea how I could detect that, but I did. My ear simply told me that they just weren't quite right. Sorry, Mum. Then one Christmas for a treat, she took my brother and I to a show starring Annette Mills and the marionette Muffin the Mule, who were very popular on TV. We were sitting quite close to the thrust, which is that bit that comes out from the stage into the audience, on which Mrs. Mills was playing the piano. Muffin the Mule was prancing about. The theatre was in complete darkness, except for an electric blue spotlight, which shone on the ebony black piano. And while Muffin was clip-clopping around on top of it, his hooves were given the coconut shell sound effect, which reverberated around the theatre, put me into a kind of a trance. It was magic time. I can see myself at this very moment sitting in my seat, open-mouthed and transfixed by the electric blue spotlight on Muffin the Mule and his clip-clopping. My mum also took us to see the first midweek matinee of The Mousetrap at the Ambassadors Theatre in November 1952. I remember nothing about it except the ending, where the stage was dark except for a desk lamp which underlit the face of Richard Attenborough peering out at us from over it. It was very frightening image, but thrilling. So I guess something about darkened theatre spotlights and sound effects planted that seed. And later on, when I was about 10, I played Captain Hook in Peter Pan at primary school and was smitten with the girl playing Wendy. Edith Lovelock was her name. Blonde-haired, blue-eyed. So that's how you meet girls, I thought. I remember Tony Buster Gill, the son of the owner of Gill's famous fish and chip shop in Notting Hill, playing Peter Pan and giving Wendy a kiss, and that made me very jealous. Good memories, those.
So is it safe to say the theatre was your first love when it comes to your acting aspirations?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, again, it was my mum. She took us to see the flamboyant Irish actor-manager Michael McLearmore in The Importance of Being Oscar. I remember he came on in a dinner jacket on the lapel of which was a green carnation, and beside him a small, tall table upon which stood a tall bowl of flowers and a crystal decanter and tumbler. And this actor opened his mouth, and the sound of his tempered Irish-accented voice filled the auditorium with such command and articulation and nuance that I was filled to the gills with that performance for weeks afterwards. It was a consummate display of stage artistry. Quite old-fashioned now, of course, but nonetheless wonderfully theatrical. By the way, I think it is still available to see on YouTube. The Importance of Being Oscar, Michael McLearmore. You'll find it. It's very dated, but you will see the artistry that I'm talking about. Shall I go on with this?
Yes, please do. It's fascinating.
Well, when I was, 17 or so, I did a play at the Regent Polytechnic, playing the leader of a gang of teddy boys and shamelessly stealing the show. So I guess those experiences nourished the seed. And the coup de grace was seeing Laurence Olivier on TV in the film of Richard III and being, pulverized by his extraordinarily evil and powerful performance. It came straight through the screen and bit me in the neck. I should also add, actually, that around this time, Peter Sellers, of the then Goon Show fame, had recorded 2 LPs full of wonderfully funny sketches, and his ability to sound like so many different men and women was astonishing. I knew them all by heart and imitated them all over the place. And this ability to change voice and character was later displayed in a coffee bar in Baker Street one evening, when a rather continental-looking man, accompanied by 4 friends, sat down and he ordered each of their drinks and food in a different foreign or regional accent and tone of voice. And one of the girls at my table whispered to us, in wild-eyed astonishment, I can see it now, "Did you hear that guy just now? He changed his personality 4 times. And I knew then that I could do what that chap had done, and I wanted to do it for a living. Basically, I guess I wanted to be other people, having, of course, absolutely no idea who the hell I was.
No wonder Peter Sellers was your inspiration then. That was him to a T, wasn't it?
Yeah, he was.
I read about your close call with electrocution. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Oh, blimey O'Reilly. Gosh, yeah. Well, after I left school with my minimum 5 O-levels, my dad got me a job with the TV and radiogram manufacturers Alba. I think they're still going, actually, near St. Paul's Cathedral. And before working in their office, I was put on the factory floor and shown how to repair TV sets that had been returned faulty. Now, the golden rule then was to always have one hand in your pocket and not resting on the metal frame of the set that you were repairing, the outer plastic or Bakelite covering having been removed, of course. So one day, while listening to Roy Orbison over the tannoy on the factory floor and daydreaming about my girlfriend, I did just that. My hand was resting on the frame, and the other hand, while tinkering with a screwdriver, I touched a live terminal and was patched into the circuit. I remember the current thumping around my body and shaking me, powerless to do anything, until a colleague on the bench next to me saw what was happening and came over quickly and yanked the wires from the mains on my workbench. He sat me down, got me a mug of tea. 50 minutes later, back to work. I mean, that kind of thing would happen to us from time to time, and not a lot of fuss was made. And I would have been electrocuted for sure if he hadn't ripped those wires out. That was a bit of a lesson learned, that one.
A painful lesson, that's for sure. Can you cope with listening to Roy Orbison now as a result of this?
Oh, yes, Roy Orbison. Oh, never been anyone like him. That voice. Latterly in his life, he'd been part of a group called the Travelling Wilburys that comprised George Harrison, Bob Dylan, Tom Petty, and Jeff Lynne. I think that was it. After Orbison died, they recorded a video of the song called End of the Line, with Orbison's guitar rocking in a chair and the group playing and paying homage to him around it. A quite exceptional artist. On YouTube, there's a recording of a filmed concert called Black and White Night, which has him and a famous group, including Bruce Springsteen, singing Pretty Woman and Dream Baby. It's to die for. Wonderful Roy Orbison. Yeah.
One of the greatest acting schools in the world is RADA, the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts. Now, that was something that you needed to audition for a number of times. What kept you motivated to keep trying to get into that school in particular?
Oh, God. Yeah, well, I had to get in, you know. I had to be an actor. I had to. It was my dream. And dreams can come true, I think, if you truly believe they can. No, they can, if you believe they can. And the alternative was, I guess, to creep back to a state agency, which I was doing, which I'd grown weary and wary of, knowing that I'd be spending my life in something my heart simply wasn't in. I was decided and determined, and even after having been told again and again that 99% of the time actors were out of work. But you don't listen to that kind of thing when you're young. Thank goodness.
What are some of your memories of working at the Old Vic, and what's the best piece of advice Sir Laurence ever gave you?
Oh, well, the Old Vic. Well, but let's put it this way. In my heart, the National Theatre at the Old Vic back then was a bit like Camelot. I mean, in reality, of course, it wasn't at all, but I like to imagine it had that aura. You know, snow all around, brilliant sunlight reflected off it, etc. You know, it's very romantic. But seriously, in my view, it was the greatest theatre company in the world. Better even, I think, than the Comédie Française or the Moscow Arts. And at the head of a very large round table, if you like, sat the inspiration and heroic leader of it all, King Arthur, in the form of Sir Laurence Olivier, who became, because of his spellbinding skills on stage and in film, was also Merlin. All the rest of us were his knights, knaves, jesters, serfs, and so on, you know. He auditioned me personally, and despite drying up a few times in front of him, my idol and the reason for me being an actor, he invited me to join the company to understudy Robert Stevens and play as cast. And I had the gross temerity to turn him down. But a year later, he remembered me, and I was called back in to audition for him and Kenneth Tynan, John Dexter, Dr. Jonathan Miller, and the great Michael Blakemore. Theatrical giants, all of them. These Tom Baker's roles in Merchant of Venice and A Woman Killed with Kindness were up for grabs, and I got 'em. Tom was leaving the company to do 2 big international movies, if I remember rightly, neither of which, for whatever reason he did, I think one of them was never made. Yeah, but working for and acting with Olivier, how to put it, you were on Mount Olympus in the presence of, well, somebody really special. Honestly, we all worshipped him. We were in awe of him, and we would have gone through fire for him. Maybe Maggie Smith might have stopped just short of that. I don't know. I think she'd have probably had to speak to her agent. "Maggie, we've had a request from the Old Vic. Would you care to walk through fire for Sir Laurence?" I wonder what her reply would have been. Yeah, that's great.
Now, so far, you've compared the Old Vic to Camelot and Mount Olympus. It sounds almost mythological.
Mythological? Well, I don't know, in as much as it was in a way, because I've never personally experienced anything like the heights and magic of it again. It was unique. The Old Vic was one of the most iconic theatres in England. It became for many years the home of our National Theatre, added to which it was run by and participated in by arguably the greatest actor who ever lived. And if you add to that the roster of world-famous productions, playwrights, new and older directors and designers, both national and international, actors and technical crew, the crème de la crème, as Miss Jean Brodie would put it. Our present National Theatre has 3 auditoria and a bulging list of personnel, except that very many of the 2,000-odd employees, mostly front of house, etc., have now been sacked due to COVID. It's desperate, dreadful, heartbreaking for the whole industry, for most industries, for everybody all over. All that work down the drain for people who need the work and want the work. The Old Vic, on the other hand, was a single solitary theatre on the Waterloo Road, bursting at the seams with talent, and of course having nowhere near the personnel. It's funny talking about this. I know it must be really hard for younger people to process or understand all this nostalgia, because unlike now, there was deference, respect, and politeness back then for our olders and betters. Die-hard professionals who'd paid their dues and earned their spurs the long and hard way. Suck on that, wokedom. As human beings, for sure, we should have equal opportunities, but as professionals, as in any field of endeavour and industry and service, you need to earn your place in the arena rather than merely have a sense of entitlement to it. So, to us, he, the Gov, was the golden yardstick of everything that great acting was about. And we haven't even talked about his extraordinary film career. Actually, he was also one of the troops. So, for instance, I would be sitting in the tiny Old Vic canteen with a colleague, and we'd hear a voice saying, "May I join you?" And it was Sir Laurence, and he'd sit down with his cup of tea and a biscuit. Making conversation with him was challenging, but he knew that, and so he made it easy for us. He made the running, and we joined in. Unlike Peter Hall years later, who we saw just once for 10 minutes before a read-through, and then never again for the 14 months of one of the National Theatre's most successful productions ever, Death of a Salesman. The difference, as Shakespeare says, between man and man. Olivier was inclusive. He was one of us. I remember an incident during the very early rehearsals of Long Day's Journey into Night by Eugene O'Neill, in which incidentally I understudied and later had the great good fortune at a moment's notice to go on for Ronnie Pickup. That was a hair-raising story, I can tell you.
Well, now you've flagged. I think you've got to tell us what that was.
Oh, God. Okay. Well, we'll get back to that in a second. But briefly, going on for Ronnie, we'd opened and were into the run at the new theatre in St Martin's Lane, and I'd been heavily partying on the Friday night, well into the early hours of Saturday morning, with little or no sleep. only to arrive rather groggily at the stage door 35 minutes before the curtain went up, to find our company manager, Richard Mangan, pointing a beckoning finger towards me, with the heart-stopping news that Ronnie Pickup had lost most of his voice, and that I would be on for him if the famous laryngologist Norman Punt, who was in attendance, couldn't find some voice for him. And I turned on my heels and rushed away, with Richard yelling after me, "Well, where are you going?" "To buy a razor," I said. And before he got the wrong idea, I added, "to shave off this moustache." Well, to make a long story short, Ronnie survived the afternoon on about 20% of his voice, and I was on for the evening performance, which was a packed house, standing room only, for the National Theatre in the West End, with my boss and my hero, Laurence Olivier, leading the company. And so, between the shows, I had been called into Olivier's dressing room to go over a 25-minute duologue I had alone with just him and me in the last act. And this was probably to reassure him that I wasn't going to let him and the entire company down by losing my nerve and double faulting all over the place. And thank goodness I didn't, and it was champagne and hugs from the great man after the show. And for part of the following week, too. It was a wonderful experience. And here's a funny thing. On the Sunday after that first performance, I remember, to my astonishment, that I was quite literally walking on air. My feet were about half an inch off the ground. I'd heard of that expression and pooh-poohed it, but it actually happened to me, and I'm afraid never has again. Yeah, them's were heady days, they were. Wonderful. So, getting back to that incident in the rehearsal room, were we there, I think?
Yes, let's go. I want to hear what happens there.
Well, it was in the very early days of rehearsal. Olivier had nearly killed himself stepping back off a high table and colliding with a chair over the top of which he'd somersaulted and hurtled into a desk nearby, smashing his head against it, and lying deathly still for a while before slowly coming round. I was really badly shaken up. His glasses were smashed and there were smears of blood across the side of his forehead, but up he got, asked our marvellous company manager, Richard Mangan, to get his spare glasses from his office, and soon as you like, he was back up on that table and doing it all over again, except this time to perfection, and applause from a room dumbstruck with admiration for his courage and leadership. He was the governor, that's what he was. David Jason rightly conferred that comedic honour on Ronnie Barker, and that's what Laurence Olivier was to us. thegov.com. Oh, yeah. The best bit of advice he ever gave. I think you asked me that. Was that right?
Yeah, that's it. That's right.
Yeah. Well, it's this. If you're having difficulty with a part, try increasing the pace. It works wonders. And you know what? It's true. It does. So, that was the golden advice.
Now, you mentioned Tom Baker before, so
Yes.
Thomas, okay. Did you by any chance get to know Tom Baker during your role in Nicholas and Alexandria? And if so, how did he strike you long before he became a household name?
Well, no, I didn't meet Tom at all during my time on that movie. By pure coincidence, I was seen 3 times by Sam Spiegel and Franklin Schaffner, the director, for the part of Rasputin, but I was too young, and Tom, of course, got it. And I think partly by courtesy of a recommendation from his then-boss, Olivier, who was already in the movie. And I think it also helped that Tom had actually been a bit of a monk, for a short time anyway. Some years later, Tom and I would bump into each other in Soho, foot-slogging around the sound studios doing voice work. And we'd spend ages talking about the Old Vic and Larry Olivier. The same thing with Michael Jaston and Ben Whitrow and Frank Barry. We were always drawn back to that time. Always. Extraordinary. Didn't take much, didn't take more than a few minutes, and we were back there, chatting and gossiping away for ages. Wonderful. As you know, he's very popular, is Thomas Baker. Very easy to see why. He's a genuine and generous man.
I'm a good thief.
Although even the best
thieves get it wrong sometimes. There was one time I got it very badly wrong.
Coming soon from Big Finish Productions.
I knew you'd come back, Blake.
A third member of my crew came barreling into the Black Room in a hail of gunfire.
My associates tell me that some things are worth fighting for.
Will you come to Treese and help me release the Grandee?
I had no option but to do this.
While he remains a prisoner, the rebellion can't succeed.
I had to know.
I wouldn't have lifted a finger, never mind pointed a gun.
Operation Hope has failed. Speranza has fallen to the rebels.
Liberator moved in to attack.
It doesn't matter how far or how fast you could run. You'll always find yourself back here.
Blake 7, The Liberator Chronicles, Volume 10. Big Finish. We love stories.
You've had an extraordinary career, and you've just mentioned so many amazing names and so many amazing facts. But for many of us, the thing that we all know you for and love you for is the role as Travis of Blake 7. So what was it that appealed to you about playing the part of Travis on TV?
Well, it meant that I'd be working with Gareth Thomas and Jan Chappell, with who I was with at the Royal Academy, and who I liked very much, and also with Paul Darrow, who had played my defence lawyer in the first of the Thames TV series Killers, the Steiny Morrison case, or The Corpse on Clapham Common, as Eric Linklater referred to it in his book. We became good mates and fellow movie buffs, and as you may know, it was Paulie who tipped me off about Blake 7. I knew absolutely nothing about sci-fi, but Travis's soldierly qualities and commitment, and of course his most powerful motivation, that of revenge, partly fuelled by his lady boss, imperiously played by that Jackie Pearce, which back in 1977, pre-Thatcher days, was pretty unique, and, well, that really appealed to me, yeah.
You were very popular and we loved the role, but why was it that you didn't continue to play Travis into season 2?
Well, I nearly did. I had a change of heart about not doing it after talking to David Maloney, the producer. He assured me that there'd be no further repetitions of episodes ending with me uttering the deathless warning, "I'm going to get you, Blake." And I trusted and liked David and was promised, 9 or 10 episodes, so lots more work, more money, and further good times with my growing circle of workmates. However, at the same time, I was offered a cracking good 2-hour TV movie called The Sewers of Gold, it was based on an audacious bank robbery in Nice, playing opposite Ian McShane, and also with very good money, 3 weeks filming in the south of France. And that job, for me, replaced a brilliant series that I should have already filmed by then, called Out, by Trevor Preston and directed by Big Jim Goddard. But I had ruptured my Achilles tendon playing squash at the RAC club, and I had to be recast. I remember ringing Jim Goddard at his home from my hospital bed and asking if I could play the part on crutches. I'm afraid his 4-word reply cannot be repeated here. By the way, my recasting resuscitated the career of Brian Marshall. He still owes me for that. Can you hear me up there, Brian? Bless his heart. The problem with the second series of Blake 7 was that the filming dates in the south of France clashed with the filming dates of Blake 7. Both dates were signed off, so one of them had to go for me. I was completely knackered after my Achilles tendon operation, followed by 6 weeks or so of seriously intense physiotherapy. It's an unpleasant and scary thing to do, busting your tendon. Also, I'd been doing TV work non-stop for years, so the thought of some days off, lying on a sunny beach in Nice, as opposed to running about in the rain on Rickmansworth Chalk Quarry in a heavy leather costume, was a no contest, I'm afraid. It was off to the Côte d'Azur for me, and thank you very much indeed, Lord Lou Grade. I should say the really good part about that job was that I met and fell in love with my future wife, who was involved in the casting of that movie, and which led to our having children and many years of happy family life. There you are.
It's been almost 45 years since you played that part. Is that right, if I get my maths right? Why do you think Blake Seven still has such a strong fan following even today?
Well, that's easy, actually. It's the characters and their relationships with each other, without a scintilla of doubt. I mean, forget about the daft plots and situations that come with sci-fi. They're good fun and all that, but it's the relationships within the Liberator and outside it with the Federation that really worked. And it's actually to the credit of Big Finish that the audiobooks and dramas are still spinning off and continue to be popular, thank goodness. I mean, Colin Baker is now, as you know, also playing a wild, quite un-Doctor Who-like character, who in one of the episodes is mixed up with a new incarnation of my part. And boy, are we having some fun. Also, Hugh Fraser is continuing to play the President in some of the Blake Seven adventures. And we're having lots of fun too, so onwards.
So were you surprised that there was still so much interest in Blake Seven when Big Finish approached you about coming back to it?
Not really, no. I knew that they were turning out Doctor Who stories, and on the success of that, it seemed natural that they would branch out.
Yeah, I guess you were aware of the ongoing interest through your involvement in fan conventions over the years. So were there any memorable experiences from some of those?
Oh, yeah, they were all fun, and it was a win-win situation for everybody involved, thanks primarily to Diane Geese and Horizon. Also, there have been a few very special tribute conventions to Gareth and Jackie, and next year to Paul, which is run by a small group of the most loving and dedicated fans, where people come from all over the world to join in the celebrations and affection for those who have left us. It's heavenly, truly, truly heavenly. Conversely, I recall Sally and I going to a mall somewhere in Kent, where we were put on one of the walkways together with film extras or TV extras who, by dint of being caught in the background of a photo taken of one of the stars of the film that was being shot, so they set up stalls with banners behind them and pictures of them in a crowd scene or in the background and with the star in the foreground, and selling 10x8s of these. Bizarre! Doesn't cover it, but good luck to them. Good luck, that's how it goes. She actually reminds me of a movie that John Schlesinger made called Day of the Locust, which is about the frenzy that resided in the fringes of the movie world back in the 1930s, I guess.
So how do you find Big Finish to work for as a company?
Oh, I find them easy to work with and likeable. I mean, I was doing work with Jason Haig-Ellery from the get-go, and he seemed to me the sort of guy who pressed down on the accelerator, and I admire that attitude to work. And he's also got a bloody fine team with Nick Briggs, David Richardson, Johnny Ainsworth, Lisa Bowerman, and a whole group of very good writers. My apologies to those I've omitted to mention. There are many that I haven't, but they spring to mind from that question.
Now, the Blake Seven audio drama range is quite diverse. You've got and been in audiobooks, and then you've had full cast plays, and you've had something in between like the Liberator Chronicles. What challenges does a reading have as opposed to the full cast audio play?
Preparation, and then some. But the books in particular, because you have to cast the non-regular characters and find a voice for them, which in many cases is simply finding the right pitch of voice, particularly with ladies. But I'm afraid the broker's men, Messrs. PC and Woke, have even insinuated themselves into this field, and so any kind of foreign accent, if not genuine, has to be diluted and sometimes ironed flat. Takes the fun out. But again, it is what it is, so onwards. Incidentally, I heard that a well-known TV actress arrived at a sound studio to record a talking book, and she ripped open the large envelope that had been sent to her containing the book she was to read, and said, "Now, what do we have here?" It's absolutely true, and I cannot believe it. If that happened to me, that would be like a bad nightmare of the actor, you get on stage forgetting all his lines. I mean, ripping it open without even looking at it, let alone preparing it, is to me monstrous. But there we are. We all have our own ways, and on we go.
How are you finding the challenge of working remotely during this pandemic?
In terms of audio or microphone work, in common with hundreds, if not thousands of others, I now have a home studio facility, which I'm talking to you from now, which covers just about every facet of recorded voice work other than dubbing. And it seems to work. But in terms of personal interaction and all that creates, it's rather bloodless and two-dimensional, but practical. I mean, I can't whinge because it's enabled me to continue to earn a living. And I mean, I long to be able to do more TV and film work, which has to be said for actors in my age group, and I am talking over 65. And in my case, a tiddly bit more is extremely thin on the ground, and then really only consists of a few lines and maybe 2 or 3 days' work. You just look at any TV program and count the number of characters over a certain age. I suspect that COVID may be causing restrictions too. I saw with sadness that at this year's Wimbledon, they cancelled all the seniors and vets events. And that's for players of only 45 years old and above. It's very sad. I'm put in mind, actually, as I'm talking to you, I did an episode of a series called The Alienist, second series, playing a judge. And actually it was, contrary to what I've just said, a rather nice 4-page part with rather a lot of lines. And I did that in Budapest. And it was a nice part of a judge. And I came back, I remember, I went into ADR, which is automated dialogue replacement. And some of that scene had been cut, but there were still some good bits left. And then when it came out, about, 6 months after that, not only had I been totally cut, the entire scene had gone. So you're up against that kind of thing, I'm afraid, with filming. And if you have a smaller part, you're liable to feel it more than if you're playing a bigger part. It's the rules of the game. It's the way it goes. So
you were involved in the invention of something called voice quality system. So do you want to tell us a bit about what that is exactly?
Oh, yeah, voice quality. Yeah. Well, there used to be a very slim directory produced by an organisation called the Spoken Word Publishers Association for actors and their contact details who narrated talking books. And the publishers of those talking books would give a Christmas and summer party for those of us who narrated them, together with the producers. And one Christmas I got into conversation with the ex-head of BBC Radio 2 Light Entertainment, big red-bearded chap called Jonathan James Moore, who I'd previously met when he directed me in a popular Radio 4 series called Flying the Flag, with the late Dinsdale Landon playing the British ambassador in Moscow. What a hoot that was. Well, we'd had a few sherries, 1 or 2 ports, perhaps a Cointreau or 3, and I asked him if he'd had difficulties casting actors for radio from the famous actors directory, the Spotlight, which is the industry Bible, and which contains our picture and description of height and colour of eyes, etc., but no mention of the natural quality and character of the actor's voice, thus distinguishing us from mime artists. I guess I shall expect angry letters from mime artists with pictures of shaking fists. We got quite excited about it, agreed to meet up and discuss it further, and this resulted in me contacting the late Nigel Seal, who ran the Spotlight, and who I'd known personally for many years because I'd won their prize at drama school of a free half-page in their directory for a year. Nigel set up a meeting with us at Spotlight with their team, including his son Ben, and it was agreed, after we'd successfully presented them with a complete analysis and demonstration of how our system, voice quality, was going to work, that we got the go-ahead to develop and produce it, with them being granted world licensing rights. I guess in essence, it actually just boiled down to the actor choosing one adjective from a list of adjectives that he or she felt best described the quality and the character of their natural speaking voice. 1 word for each. Should have been 2 words for each, but the software development team who would design this system digitally for the internet, for which it was primarily required, said it would be too complicated, so 1 of each it was. Of course, the process of arriving at that final list of 20 words for each took about 2 years, and endless listening to tapes of hundreds and hundreds of actors of both sexes by a panel of 7 judges, including Jonathan and myself. And the panel that we commissioned included the novelist Sue Lim and the high-profile film and TV casting director and producer, and now an agent, Esther Charkham, who later confided to me that it was the hardest task she'd ever undertaken. The system became very successful right away with a rapid take-up. My original idea was for it to be in the books, as well as on their internet site, but I'm afraid the books have now been discontinued. They were always a lost leader, but retained at the request of many casting directors and producers who liked having the book on their laps and flicking through the pictures. Well, who doesn't like flicking through pictures? Hey-ho. Well, the whole casting process has now become more mechanical and digital and less personal, I think, as hordes and hordes of new faces join the motley. Telephone calls are almost a thing of the past, with emails and texts replacing them. Actually saddens and upsets me. But it is what it is. So, onwards.
So how has the acting world changed since you left drama school all those years ago?
Oh, gosh. Well, that's a question. How's it? Well, it's unrecognisable, of course, because our world has changed. As a consequence of the closure of repertory companies up and down the country, actors leaving drama school or generally just entering the profession have very many fewer places to go to and make mistakes and as a result learn by them. So invariably they may be fortunate enough to go straight into TV and behave as naturally as they can without the craft and skills they may and should have learned out in the provinces. I didn't do any TV work until I'd gone through about 5 solid years of classical theatre acting, and as a result, I knew more, I hope, about how to flesh out a character and how to present myself less self-consciously. The TV or film director has a tight schedule in which to deliver, let's say, 1 or multiple hours of drama or a block of 50-minute soaps, and so has little or no time, through no fault of his or her own, to spare on the actor who may need help. You have to deliver on the spot, and sometimes that can cause less than satisfactory results. In the theatre, you may have a 3, 4, or even 6-week rehearsal period during which a scene or a character that needs working on has the time for just that. So you learn how to develop character through trial and error. We also now, of course, have to again deal with those brokers' men, Messrs. PC and Woke, where a regional or foreign language character is now generally played by the authentic article, thus eliminating the skills that an actor has learned and, by consequence, cancelling many of the facets of being an actor. I know, as human beings, we ought to have equal opportunities to be considered for work. And as professionals, as with any field of endeavour and industry or service, you need to earn your place in the arena rather than merely have a sense of entitlement to it. I mean, this wokedom has major reverberations throughout the offices of theatrical and casting agents. You can imagine their browbeating frustrations. Well, the older ones anyway, I think. That excellent casting agent, Beth Charkham, posted her honest and truthful concerns recently on social media, and I support her and her colleagues. Much good it won't do. It's a fever, you know. It's a strain of insanity, a giant squid that's gripped the industry and the world around the throat and throttled the fucking life and fun out of it. Excuse my lingo. Don't any director or producer dare to ask an actor to slim down or put on weight for fear that director's name will be sullied with the tag discriminatory and put on some blacklist, not dissimilar to the terror whipped up in 1950s America. Now we also have objectification. Oh, yes, where, for instance, a commentator recently joked about the name of a male tennis player's fiancée, Annette Boursemenier, saying, "If you're a tennis player, it's always good to have a partner called Annette." To which Boris Becker playfully replied, "They say they have the most beautiful women in Hungary. I wouldn't know, but she is certainly very pretty." No, hush your mouth, you can't say that. Boris was later criticised for the comment, with the BBC thankfully defending him. Well, of course. Apparently, it's described as changing room chat rather than commentary chat. So anything other than commentary, strictly verboten. Oh dear, I've used a German word. Does that mean I'm a racist? One short compliment about a lady looking pretty. How about the lady herself? I wonder, did any of these objectors think to ask her if she'd rather not be fleetingly described in this rather pleasant way? Or do ladies prefer not to be complimented on their looks? Or men, if it comes to that? It's bonzo bananas, and how and when this will end, goodness knows. Get a life, please. Some years ago, I played a Latin American dictator in a popular and topical TV sitcom.
I hope you don't mind us having this chat. I just wanted to check what sort of questions you wanted to cover in your interview.
Well, obviously I'd like your reactions to the amnesty allegations about disappearances.
My reaction is deep concern, Damien. I intend to stamp out all human rights abuses in my country, and you can help me. Tell me the names of the people here who made these allegations about me so that I can investigate fully.
Yeah, I really couldn't do that. It'd be a betrayal of confidence.
Of course. I understand. And that would present a problem for you when you go home.
Yes.
If you go home. I understand some people in your country say I'm insane.
No, not at all.
The Sun, November the 12th, 1988, said, I was one tortilla short of a picnic.
Well, The Sun's just a comic. I'm a responsible journalist. I'd never say anything like that.
No. You would say, just another tin pot dictator who's bleeding his country dry. Your report of the 12th of February, 1990. Let's go and relax, eh? By the pool.
Okay, right.
The crocodile pool.
Now, I doubt that I'd be anywhere near being thought of before any or all English-speaking South American or Spanish or Latin performers had been considered. It's depressing. It goes against many of the reasons that most of us, certainly of my age, became actors in the first place. But I'm an optimist, and I believe that what goes around comes around, and that common sense will ultimately prevail, and that in the meanwhile we don't get Harvey Weinstein to play a sex-offending film producer, or murderers to play people who kill us, and so on. But probably not, alas, in the rest of my working life. Rats.
I can hear your frustration on the subject, and I've got to say it's something I feel equally frustrated about as a consumer. Yeah, this wokedom it's really made for a large amount of boring and uninspiring entertainment in recent years. I don't know what the answer is. Do you? Is there an answer?
No, not really. Except, as I say, what goes around comes around, and surely this loony wokedom will one day soon walk into a wall and so rearrange its brains and become sensible again, and we can all enjoy taking the piss out of each other, which, if we all do it, completely diffuses the situation. I think humour is the word I'm looking for, and boy, do we need it.
Certainly do.
Now, most recently, we've been hearing you in a couple of new releases from Big Finish. They've come up with a new Avalon series, and there's more to come later in the year.
Oh yeah.
Now, I've already raved on a previous podcast about the episode written by Gary Russell called Throwback. It was the most amazing Travis episode that's basically a two-hander where Travis manages to pull out all his guile and evil. But that was actually written by Gary Russell, and I believe, though, you have a connection with Gary Russell from many years ago when you first were acting with him in The Famous Five. So do you have any memories of that time?
Oh boy, that is going back a little while for both Gary and me. My memories of Famous Five and Gary are hazy. It was a long time ago, but I do remember the Crown Hotel where we stayed in Lyndhurst near the New Forest, and my old pal from Derby Rep days, Leon Eagles, who, when we dined there, chose the most suitable vinos to go with our supper, as he worked in a fine wine shop near Marble Arch when he wasn't acting. I can't recall the famous five themselves. I think they were German, or one or two were German, although Gary now, of course, is well known to me and everyone involved in his terrific script.
Well, listen, Stephen, thanks so much for taking the time to speak with us about your life and extensive career. We've really enjoyed hearing Travis again on audio. Long may it continue.
It's a pleasure. Nice to speak with you.
Oh, what is it? There's no one on reception because reception's been smashed to pieces.
From Big Finish Productions, The Worlds of Blake 7, The Clone Masters.
Jenna Stannis.
Hello, Hinton.
How wonderful to see you again. You've barely changed. I'm under commission from a clone master.
A clone master?
Their ruler has died.
Sound the bells. The Queen of the Clone Masters is dead.
There's quite the power struggle underway on their homeworld. If I can help them ascend to the throne, the Resistance might have a powerful new friend.
Stop all this! Stop all this at once!
Travis, I didn't think we would make quite so dramatic an entrance.
It's you! No, keep back!
This is a research base that's specialized in cloning.
She thought she recognized you. She called you Lara.
It cannot be a coincidence that there is some sort of connection to both the Clone Masters and the Aurons.
Commander Travis, I am currently with a patient.
You know who I am.
Of course I do. Travis, Space Commander, Alpha 15105.
You shouldn't have come here. It's not safe.
We must make a hasty exit. Come on!
Dr. Sim!
Okay, that does it.
I believe I'd make a worthy commanding officer.
Do you really?
I am Space Commander Travis. I am destined for great things.
What are you doing?
You have an Auron on your crew, don't you? Callie.
Why are you asking?
Because I came across an unusual Auron myself. A Lara K.
Big Finish. We love stories.
Well, there you go, Philip. How was that?
It was fantastic. Everything I could have hoped for. Very exciting meeting your childhood fans. I mean, I have met
well, he wasn't
Paul
a fan. Your childhood hero, I think you would say.
Yes, sorry. Yes, being a fan, meeting your childhood heroes. I have actually had the privilege of meeting Paul Darrow as well a few years back.
You?
Yeah, he gate crashed a Doctor Who convention I was at.
Oh, did he?
He did. It was quite. He was. I think he threw the organisers. He just turned up with a table and all his photos. He set himself up.
That's all right.
And it was fantastic. I was so thrilled to actually get some time with him. And he's an eccentric man too. But yeah, Stephen just a...
Well, Paul Darrow has been in Doctor Who, and I should say that Stephen has appeared in a couple of Big Finish Doctor Whos as well. I think the earliest one that he appeared in was Primeval, the one that was the prequel to The Keeper of Traken. And I think the most recent Doctor Who he was in was Ghost Walk with the Peter Davison. So he's done a couple of Fifth Doctor stories.
And lots of Sarah Jane Smith stuff too.
Yes. Oh, that's right. Yeah, I remember that now. Yeah. Stephen, thank you so much. It was great to be able to talk to you. We really appreciate you spending so much time talking with us about your life and your career. On that note, let's jump to some recommendations for this time. And I think I'll go... No, I won't go... No, it's not my turn. It's your turn, Philip.
Is it my turn?
It is your turn.
Well, I'll go then. I think it's appropriate to recommend something from Travis. Well, as you know, I'm a huge fan of the Companion Chronicles of Doctor Who, one of my favourite series. And to be honest, the Blake 7 Chronicles as well. It's called the Liberator Chronicles. For various reasons, Big Finish only have the rights to do the first 3 seasons of Blake 7. And in fact, it's only...
Still the case, isn't it?
It's still the case. In fact, it's only characters created by Terry Nation. So they've got a special contract with the Terry Nation estate, which gives them the right to use all his characters and all his stories. but nothing beyond that. But the Liberator Chronicles, which is how they first brought Blake Seven back to Big Finish, are usually two-handers, pretty special. And so I'm going to recommend one of the first times Stephen appeared as Travers again. It took him a bit of a while. He'd been in lots of other things. But in Volume 10, he's in a great story called Valandra by Steve Lyons. And it's a Blake and Travers story. Once again, being a two-hand, it's a very simple format, but the way they story tell is always very unique. And well worth getting anything, actually, from Liberator Chronicles, but Volume 10 has a great story with Travers in it. Okay, Dwayne, what about you? What have you been listening to, and what do you want to recommend?
Philip, you're going to growl at me. I know you are.
TV show?
Well, kind of. And when I say kind of, I'm going to recommend something, a Doctor Who episode that I watched and listened to because it's not available on its original format. I watched The Wheel in Space the other day, but I watched it in conjunction with the BBC audio release with the narration. So I watched the loose cannon and put the narration over the top. And it was really, really enjoyable. I love The Wheel in Space. Those Cybermen, Wheel in Space Cybermen, are my favourite Cybermen design. There's just something about them, the sound effects that they put around throughout that series is really interesting and scary. And I love this is a story that's got a lot of surprisingly good character development in it, which is something unusual for classic Doctor Who. There's some really deep characters there, some really interesting characters. You've got the two sort of leaders of the wheel, sort of going head to head, but having a sort of a close relationship with the leader, sort of eventually going off his tree, and then feeling guilty for causing the death of his 2IC. And then you've got the little romance going on there in the background as well. And it just, I sat down and I watched this all in one go. I don't normally do that with 6-part reconstructions. And I've got to say that I really enjoyed it. And I'm really looking forward to one day them doing the animated version of this. We had a little teaser clip. I think it was on the original Power of the Daleks, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Teaser for, featuring the servo robot. And I really love this one. So I would recommend anyone do that. Watch the loose cannon version, but try and sync it up with the BBC audio. It's really good. It's a really great story. It's got actually one of the really shocking deaths, because there's a character there you do not expect to die, and when they kill her off, it really, it's a shocking moment, because you always have the off the tree rocker leader, you expect him to die. Well, you had a few of those in Series 5.
Oh yeah, more than a few. But there's certain characters are doomed to death.
Yeah.
But there's also certain characters who you expect will actually survive, and this is actually one where they kill off someone who I just wasn't expecting to kill off at all. So it's nice to be shocked now and then. Yep. Very good. All right, that's my recommendation for this week. Thank you very much, Philip, for joining me for this episode. It's been fantastic. Thank you for organising that. It was a wonderful time with Stephen. Excellent. And we'll catch you next time. Bye for now. Bye, everyone. You have been listening to the Sirens of Audio episode 70, Memoir of a Space Commander, with our special guest Stephen Greif and your hosts Philip Edney and Dwayne Bunny. Next time we'll be joined by Bill Baggs, the man behind the other audio production company. Theme music by the Jackpot Golden Boys. Closing theme arrangement by Alistair King. Email address is sirensofaudio@gmail.com. Be sure to subscribe to us on YouTube and your favourite podcast app. Rate, review, comment and like to your heart's content. Your interaction helps others to see this program. Join our Facebook group by searching for the Sirens of Audio on that platform. You can tweet us at Audio Sirens. You can even leave your own 60-second clip of audio feedback for us at anchor.fm/Sirens of Audio. Just follow the prompts. And when you're tiring of the same old entertainment, remember to seek out audio drama, where the real stories are happening. Because audio drama is where it's at.